My younger sister's wedding was supposed to be the happiest weekend of my family's year. Instead, it became the moment I finally stopped pretending I was part of this family at all. Let me back up. My name is Vivian. I'm 31 years old. I work in logistics coordination for a mid-sized freight company in Columbus, Ohio, and for most of my adult life, I have quietly, consistently, almost compulsively paid for things that were not my responsibility to pay for. Not because I'm generous, not because I'm naive, though my therapist would probably argue otherwise. I did it because I wanted, desperately and stupidly, to be seen as someone who belonged. My sister Aubrey is 4 years younger than me. She has my mother's jawline and my stepfather's ability to walk into any room and immediately become the most important person in it. Growing up, she was the one who got the new school supplies in September. I got the leftovers from the year before. She got the birthday parties with the rented bounce house in the backyard. I got a gas station cupcake and a card signed by both of them, but written entirely in my mother's handwriting. I'm not telling you this, so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you this, so you'll understand the math. 31 years of trying to close a distance that was never going to close. That's the setup. The wedding is just where it finally broke open. Aubrey got engaged in October to a man named, and I want you to picture this carefully, someone whose family owns 4 car dealerships across western Pennsylvania. I'll call him my brother-in-law because that's the only title that matters here. His family, his mother especially, had opinions, big ones, about flowers, about venue, about whether the centerpieces were draped in satin or organza. She once sent Aubrey a 17-message voice note chain about napkin folding. 17. I listened to 3 of them because Aubrey forwarded them to me while I was eating lunch, and I nearly choked. His family had opinions. What they did not have, apparently, was any intention of paying for a single thing. That part took me a while to figure out. Here's how it went. My mother called me in November, about 3 weeks after the engagement, and she was using the voice. You know the voice. The soft one. The one that starts with, "I've been thinking," and ends with you somehow agreeing to do something that was never your idea. "I've been thinking," she said, "that you're so organized. You've always been the responsible one." I was eating cereal standing up at my kitchen counter. It was 9 on a Thursday night. I said, "Mom, what do you need?" She needed, as it turned out, quite a lot. They had already looked at venues, without telling me, and found one they loved, a renovated farmhouse property about 40 minutes outside Columbus. Beautiful place. I'd seen photos, exposed beams, string lights, a pond out back. The deposit was $4,000. She wanted to know if I could cover it temporarily, just until things settled. Just until the budget sorted itself out. I asked who was covering the rest. She said his family was expected to contribute significantly. I should have stopped there. I should have said, "Get back to me when significantly has a dollar amount attached to it." But I didn't. I transferred the $4,000 the next morning because I told myself this was an investment in my relationship with my sister. That if I showed up for her in this way, she would finally, at 31 years of watching her get the bounce house and me getting the gas station cupcake, look at me like I mattered. I know. Over the next 4 months, there were more calls. The florist required a deposit. The caterer required a deposit. Aubrey had found a videographer she loved, a husband and wife team from Pittsburgh, and they required a deposit. Each time, the conversation had the same shape. My mother's soft voice, the word temporarily, the assurance that his family's contribution was coming, that things would sort themselves out. I kept a spreadsheet. That's the logistics coordinator in me. By February, I had put in $11,200 across deposits, initial payments, and one emergency situation involving a tent rental company that had double booked and needed to be upgraded. $11,200 on a wedding that was not mine, for a sister who had never once, not once, asked how I was doing in any of those phone calls, not once said, "I know this is a lot, Vivian. Thank you." She would text me vendor contacts and Pinterest boards, and once a very long message about whether the bridesmaid dresses should be dusty rose or terracotta, a message that did not include the words, "Are you okay?" or "Thank you," anywhere in its 4 paragraphs. His family's contribution, in case you're wondering, never materialized. When I finally asked my mother directly in March, "Just tell me the number, what are they putting in?" she got quiet in a way that told me everything. "They've been very supportive in other ways," she said. Moral support. 4 car dealerships worth of moral support. Aubrey asked me to be in the wedding in January. Not as maid of honor. His sister had that. Just a bridesmaid. Which was fine. I bought my own dress, dusty rose in the end, had it altered at a tailor near my office, paid for my own hair appointment. I was so determined to be gracious about it, to not be the difficult one, to show up and smile and arrange centerpieces and haul boxes of decorations from my car to the venue, and just be a good sister, a real sister, the kind of sister I had always wanted her to be to me. The wedding was the first Saturday in June. I found out I wasn't invited on a Tuesday in May. My mother texted me. She didn't call. She texted, which I think tells you something about how she felt about having the conversation. The text said, "Hey, there's been a change. His mom is concerned about the guest dynamics and they've decided to limit the attendee list. There just isn't space for everyone. We'll celebrate with you separately, I promise." I read it twice. Then I sat down on my couch and read it 4 more times. There isn't space for everyone. I had paid $11,200 in deposits and vendor fees. I had driven 40 minutes each way to the venue 3 separate times to coordinate logistics with the event manager. I had a dusty rose dress hanging in my closet that I'd paid to have altered, and there wasn't space for me. I called my mother. She answered on the 4th ring. "Is this because of his mother?" I asked. Long pause. "She just feels like with the intimacy of the event, Mom." "Is this because of his mother?" Another pause. She mentioned that she didn't feel comfortable with. She said the family dynamic was complicated and she wanted. "What family dynamic?" I said. "I'm Aubrey's sister. I'm her only sister." "I know, honey. I paid for the venue." Silence. "I paid for the flowers, the caterer deposit, the videographer, the tent upgrade. I have a spreadsheet, Mom. $11,200. And there isn't space for me. We're going to pay you back. When?" She didn't answer that. I want to tell you I was crying. I wasn't. I was completely calm in a way that felt foreign to my own body, like I had stepped slightly outside myself and was watching the conversation from the ceiling. I heard myself say, very quietly, "I'll need to think about this," and then I ended the call. I sat on my couch for about 45 minutes. I didn't text anyone. I didn't call my best friend. I just sat there, very still, and thought about the map. $11,200. $11,200 and a dusty rose bridesmaid dress, and 3 trips to a venue 40 minutes away, and 4 months of vendor emails and deposit coordination, and a mother who texted, not called, to tell me I wasn't invited to the wedding I had paid for. And at some point in those 45 minutes, sitting very still on my couch in Columbus, Ohio, something in me finished the calculation. The next morning, I started making phone calls. The venue was first. I had signed the contract, my name, my card, my signature. Because at the time my mother had said it would be easier, given that I was so organized. I called the event coordinator, a woman I had spoken to probably a dozen times over the past 4 months. I explained that there had been a significant change in plans and I needed to cancel. She was quiet for a moment and then walked me through the cancellation policy. Because we were canceling more than 3 weeks out, the deposit, my $4,000, was refundable minus a $500 administrative fee. I said that was fine. She processed it while I was on the phone. Then I called the caterer. My name was on that contract too. Same conversation. They were further into planning, so the refund was partial. I got about 60% back, which came to just over $1,800. The caterer's coordinator was actually very kind about it. She said she hoped everything was okay. I said it would be. The florist was the most complicated call because Aubrey's maid of honor, his sister, had been the one coordinating most of the floral details, and when I called to cancel, the florist mentioned she'd been in contact with the bride's sister-in-law just yesterday. I explained that I was the one whose name and payment method were on the original contract, and that I was exercising my right to cancel. The florist asked if she should contact the bride. I said that was entirely up to her. The videographer was easy. They were lovely about it. Refunded the full deposit, no questions. By 11 in the morning, I had canceled everything in my name. I had recovered approximately $7,000 of my $11,200. The remaining amount, things paid directly to vendors where his family or my mother had eventually stepped in with their own cards, which had happened maybe twice, I let go. I wasn't going to fight for money that had already changed hands. I was only canceling what was mine to cancel. I sent my mother a text at 11:37 a.m. It said, "I've canceled the venue, the caterer, the florist, and the videographer. All contracts were in my name. I've been refunded where applicable. I wish Aubrey well." Then I blocked her number. I blocked Aubrey too. Not out of anger. I blocked Aubrey too. Not out of anger, exactly. More out of recognition. I had been trying to buy my way into a family that had already decided a long time ago what category I belonged in. The wedding was just the moment they stopped pretending otherwise. I found out later, through a mutual friend, the kind of information that finds you whether you want it or not, that the day after my text went out, there was chaos. His mother had apparently assumed her intimacy of the event concerns would be silently absorbed, that I would simply disappear from the guest list and everything I had paid for would remain in place. The venue coordinator called Aubrey directly when she couldn't reach anyone else on the contact list. Aubrey called my mother. My mother called me 12 times before realizing I had blocked her. By afternoon, they had lost the venue, the caterer's setup timeline, the florist's team, and the videographers. The car dealership family, 4 locations across western Pennsylvania, could not find a comparable venue in 10 days. I have been told they ended up at a banquet hall 40 minutes in the other direction that smelled like carpet cleaner and had a cash bar. I cannot confirm this. I choose to believe it. His mother had wanted intimacy. She got it. Here's what I want to say to anyone who is in the position I was in, who keeps paying for the bounce house. You're never invited to jump in. The people who use you will not change because you are generous. They will not look up one day and finally see you clearly because you transferred another $4,000. The transaction is the relationship as far as they're concerned. And the moment you stop being useful, or the moment someone more useful comes along, someone with 4 car dealerships and opinions about napkin folding, they will tell you there isn't space for you. There will always be people who want your resources and not your presence. That summer, I took a week off work. I drove up to Michigan with my best friend, the one I hadn't called, that Tuesday night on the couch, and we rented a cabin on a lake that had a wooden dock with 2 Adirondack chairs. I sat in one of those chairs for 3 mornings in a row and drank coffee and watched the water and did not coordinate a single thing. Nobody texted me a Pinterest board. Nobody called me with a voice that started with, "I've been thinking." I have not spoken to my mother since. I have not spoken to Aubrey. I don't know if they got legally married somewhere in some other venue that smelled like carpet cleaner, or if the whole thing collapsed without the infrastructure I had been quietly providing. I don't know, and I have made peace with not knowing. My spreadsheet still exists. I look at it sometimes, not out of bitterness, or not mostly out of bitterness, but as a kind of document, evidence that I was there. That I showed up again and again with my logistics brain and my card number and my dusty rose bridesmaid dress ready in the closet, that I tried so hard for so long at something that was never going to work. The dress is still hanging in my closet actually. I keep meaning to donate it. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll wear it to something entirely unrelated and completely inappropriate, to the grocery store or a dentist appointment, just to get some use out of the alteration fee. $11,200 is a lot of money. $7,200 is a lot of money. 7,000 back is not full justice, but I'll tell you what it is. It's enough. It's enough to remind me that I had the power all along to stop. That I could have stopped at the venue deposit and didn't, could have stopped at the florist and didn't, could have stopped a dozen times in a dozen phone calls that started with "I've been thinking." I stopped at the right time, later than I should have, but before I paid for something I couldn't get back. That's the best I can say about it. I stopped. And now it's your turn. If you're listening to this and you recognize the spreadsheet, if you know exactly what I mean when I say you've been keeping track even when you told yourself you weren't, I want to ask you something. What are you still paying for that you were never invited to? Think about it, really think about it, and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are right now. I'm curious who's listening. I always am. I've thought about this a lot since that summer. Not obsessively, I'm past the obsessive phase. But I think about the spreadsheet. $11,200, line by line, deposit by deposit, each one a choice I made with full information and chose to ignore anyway. That's the part nobody talks about when they tell stories like mine. It wasn't one dramatic moment where I was tricked. It was 50 small moments where I already knew and transferred the money anyway. That's not a comfortable thing to sit with, but I think sitting with it is the only way through it. What I've come to understand, not from a book, not from a therapist's specific phrase, just from turning it over enough times in my own head, is that the way we treat ourselves teaches other people how to treat us. Not in some simplified motivational poster way, in a very literal, operational way. When I kept covering the deposits, I was demonstrating that my presence and my money were available without conditions. I was showing Aubrey and my mother, through repeated action, that I would absorb whatever they needed without requiring anything in return. They learned that. They applied it. The wedding was just the logical conclusion of 11 years of that lesson. I'm not saying it was my fault. I want to be clear about that, because I spent a long time confusing. I contributed to this dynamic with "I deserved this outcome." Those are not the same thing. What my mother did was wrong. What Aubrey allowed to happen was wrong. His mother's decision to treat a sister as a scheduling inconvenience was wrong. I can hold all of that and still acknowledge that I kept handing them the tools. The thing about consequences is they don't always land on the right people at the right time. Sometimes you do everything correctly and still lose money, still lose a relationship, still end up with a dusty rose dress you paid to have altered hanging in your closet. Justice isn't always clean or fast. What I got back? $7,000 and my own clarity isn't a perfect ending. It's just an honest one. What I did find on the other side of all of it is something I didn't expect. I found out what I was actually capable of when I stopped spending that energy on people who had decided I was infrastructure. I got better at my job. I started being more deliberate about who I let into my time. I drove to Michigan and sat on a dock and didn't coordinate a single thing for 7 days and realized I had forgotten what that felt like, existing without being useful to someone. That week on the dock is what I think of now when I feel the old pull, the urge to offer, to cover, to show up with my card and my spreadsheet and my organized brain and say, "Here, let me help. Maybe this time it'll be different." I think of the Adirondack chair and the coffee and the quiet lake, and I ask myself, is this an investment in something real, or am I paying for a bounce house I'm never going to get to use? Vivian learned it at 31 with $11,000 and a canceled venue. You don't have to wait that long. The spreadsheet is already running. The only question is when you decide to close it.